Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And here we go. This is part 3 of the pedalboard build. And so far it's been quite an adventure. And so I had to come out here to really try to comprehend all of these interesting items that I needed for the pedal board. And you can take a look at it here. Here we go. My goodness, it's a little creek. Look at that. Oh my goodness. How far does it go? Wow. Oh my. Look at that. Running water there. Crystal clear mountain water. Well, maybe that's a little exaggeration. Okay. Now so far in our pedalboard build series, okay, we've gotten a MIDI controller, and then we got a MIDI Solutions quadra-through box, which was kind of problematic because we had to use not only the Soulman, right, MIDI controller, but we also had to use a Disaster Area Design smart clock for it to work. Okay. Now, in this episode, as promised, we're going to deal with power. Now, you might be saying, well, what do you mean power? And that is this. It would not make sense that each of these pedals, which has its own power supply, AC adapter, what's commonly known as a wall wart, something like that. Right? Well, if you had 10 pedals and you had to plug 10 of these in to the wall, it's just not practical. You couldn't really do that. So what they came out with, of course, is just a pedalboard power supply. So we've got to provide power to all these pedals. So they came out with these little power supplies, and they're basically little boxes, right? And they are able to power 10 pedals and that kind of thing, right? And you just have one AC adapter that plugs in the box, and then little cables that come out. And I'll show you this here in a second. And so this came from just Amazon, and there's a ton of different ones, and they all claim that they're isolated power supplies, and they are not. At least the ones we're talking about, because they range in price, you know, from very expensive to very inexpensive. And usually what I do on a pedal board, especially if I'm using digital effects, is I'll have a larger, more expensive power supply for the digital pedals, right, that make audio sounds. And the reason is it keeps it clean, right, and you get clean power. And also these little power supplies can't handle the power requirements of these big multi-effect digital pedals. However, they're still very useful. So usually I use two. I use a small one and a more expensive one, bigger one, to handle the digital effects. And the small one is used to power things like the Soulman MIDI foot controller, the Disaster Area Design smart clock, those kinds of things. So I went online and looked around, and I thought I saw one that said power supply by Pigtronics. Right? I thought, oh, okay. Well, as it turns out, it wasn't a Pigtronics at all. It was a pigtone. I don't think they're the same company. But anyway, So I got the power supply. Okay, and so this pigtone power supply has arrived. And we're going to have an unboxing. Unfortunately, yes, it's another recreation. Because when I get these things, man, I have to open them up and see what's there. Okay, so basically, it's arrived and we're going to have an unboxing. Now, please don't try this at home. Only trained professionals should attempt. And here it is. Wow. Power supply. And this was $31, if you can believe it. And that's the new price, including the shipping. 31 bucks. Can you believe it? Wow. So what do you get for that 31 bucks? Well, let's find out. Here we go. I'm going to open it. Oh, my goodness. There it is. Okay. Very first thing that pops out is, take a look at this. The Pigtone Power Supply pd03. Wow. See that? Little tiny box. And it has a bunch of isolated outputs here. Well, they call them isolated. They're not really isolated. But here's what's interesting. There's also a little switch right here. And there, for each output here, there's a little LED light. You can turn them on and off. They're blue. What is that? Wow, look at him. He's pretty big. Wow. How cool is that? Some kind of duckling. They've been known to roam these parts. Man, I'm really bonding with nature here. Look at him. Wow. Alright. I'm starting to be frightened. He might attack me. How cool is that? Now, Pigtone Power. So right here you have an input, right, where you plug it into the wall, and that comes with an assortment of cables, and one of them is the AC adapter. So we'll take this AC adapter, okay, and that plugs in here, and that gives it the whole thing power. Now what's cool about this, it's so small that this can mount under your pedal board, right? So that's quite interesting. Just like the MIDI quadra through, right, from the last episode, which can mount under your pedal board too. Now you have this little power adapter as well, right? Okay, so it comes with an assortment of these cables right here, right? And they look like the end of a power adapter on each end. One end plugs into the power supply, and the other end plugs into a effects pedal. So basically, like this. Right? And then this plugs into a pedal. Now, here's the thing. Of course, you know, every pedal's different, has different power requirements. So on this particular one, right, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 DC 9-volt outputs, 100 milliamp, okay? And There are 6 of those right here. And if you'll remember, the Soulman MIDI controller, for example, requires 9 volts, 70 milliamps. So that'll work fine for this. One of these 6 here. Another one is Disaster Area Designs. Should be able to be powered with the 100 milliamp. I'm not too concerned whether it generates a noise or not, and the reason is because the pedals themselves don't generate any sound. In other words, the smart clock, right, and the MIDI foot controller, the Soulman MIDI foot controller, right, they just pass on information. They don't create any sound. So perfect for that. Now, in addition, you also have 2 high current, right, 400 milliamp, right here and here, right? So basically you have 2 high output, 9 volt outputs. And then here, the last 2 are for 12 volt or 18 volt, both 100 milliamp, in case you run into a pedal that would use that. And I mean, I can read you. Comes with instructions as well, right? Also, this deals with polarity of the pedal. Some pedals have a center positive, right, or center negative, and they include one adapter so that you can, if you need to change the polarity to power a pedal, you can do it here. So all that was 31 bucks. Hard to believe. Hard to believe. So here you have product features, which is high current multiple output, right? 10 isolated outputs, and they have short circuit overcurrent protected. Wow. Bright blue LEDs for pedalboard lighting and short circuit indication, and includes all the cables. So there you go. So let's go ahead and try it out, make sure it works, and see what it can power. Okay, so here it is, and we're gonna power it up here with the AC adapter, and this is to provide power to this pedal. Okay, so I've got an AC adapter here. Let me plug that in. Okay, it's plugged in. Now here's what's cool about this little one. You have your choice of either turning on the little LEDs right here, right? Though you know it's going under the board, so it'll not that big a deal. I guess it looks cool though, right? Okay. So first thing, we've got it powered up. And look at this. Holy smokes. A bunch of cables. They're little tiny cables. There's 10 of them. And that's to connect to pedals to give it power, instead of an AC adapter as I'm using now, which creates a big mess. Alright, I'm going to connect this one, right, to the Soulman. Let's see if it powers it up. I've got it plugged in here. Plug in the Soulman. And there you go. Look at that. How cool is that? See how it powers up right there? Okay, and it's just one cable to this little controller. So it provides pretty clean power, you know. I mean, it's not isolated again, so it could create buzz and hum in your sound. However, not with this, because it doesn't create any sound. So already, I can get rid of this power supply. So I'm going to put that back in the box. No longer needed to power the Soulman. And when it'll be installed on the pedal board, this little unit will be under the board, and then it'll just plug into the source audio. Now let's try another one. Let's see if it powers the smart clock. Well, there's the smart clock, but right now it's being powered by a big old AC adapter. Right? Big. So let's see if we can take that out of the equation and run it off this little box. And sure enough, take a look at this. It's powering up, and there it is. And that's running off the little box here. Right? So there's another AC adapter out of the way. And it's working great. Let's see. Yes, I'm hitting the preset buttons and it's changing. So there you go. So there's two. Super. Okay. Now, this is where it can get a little complicated. Now let's see if I can power up this Electro Harmonics Bass 9 pedal. Sure enough, take a look at this. Powers up. There we go. And that's coming off the little board here. Okay, so there's three. And that's why I say the Bass 9 pedal, the other power supply I'm getting for this board is a pedal supply designed really to power digital multi-effects, or digital effects if you like. Okay? And it will power these pedals no problem. Right? However, it can only power 4 of them. Right? So we could always use these extra power. Wow. Now that, I have to admit, I did not expect. Just as a test, it has two 450 milliamp plugs, right? As well as the 100 milliamp. So I plugged it into the 450, and check this out. I can't believe it. And this is, it powers the Line 6 M5. Look at that. Wow. And that I did not expect, I have to admit. And the reason I didn't expect that is that the Line 6 M5 is very touchy as far as power goes. So far this thing is pretty incredible. I mean, wow. And listen, honestly, for $30 I wasn't expecting much. But it's powering these pedals no problem. And I'll try one more just in case. I just cannot believe that. That's incredible. Wow. Check this out. I just plugged in a Boss SY200 pedal. Right? And I'm using the 450 milliamp. The second one. Amazing. Powers it right up. No problem. There's the SY200. Holy smokes. Okay. I'm quite impressed with this little unit. Because so far it can power all at the same time the Disaster Area Design Smart Clock. Right? The Source Audio Soul Man. The Boss SY200 synthesizer pedal. The Line 6 M5, which usually has a real hard time power-wise. Alright, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And it still has a few other jacks that I can use. However, I've used up the two 450 milliamp jacks. There's only 2 of them. And the rest are little 9 volt. But that gets rid of 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of those AC adapters, right? Those wall warts. So that's really great. The rest would have to be smaller pedals, you know, because they're only 100 milliamps. I'm really impressed there. You know, now, when we get the other power supply, right, we should have more than enough power for all the pedals easily. Very impressive, I have to admit. So this was super, man, what a deal. What a deal. And, you know, it's funny because when I ordered it, I thought it said Pigtronics. That's what I thought it was. But it's actually Pigtone. I don't think it's quite the same company. But it's exactly what I wanted. Just something that could power some of the lower powered pedals. And it's doing that with no problems whatsoever, you know. And I'm quite surprised that it powers up bigger pedals as well, if needed. You know, and I say that because the other power supply, when it arrives, will power the bigger digital pedals like the Boss, the M5, and so on. So it won't even have to do that, this little thing. For $30, man, it's a bargain. I just got it at Amazon. There's a ton of them, you know. None of them at that price are truly isolated. However, some, I guess, are better than others. In any case, there you go. Okay. So I'm quite thrilled with the Pigtone power supply. And I was quite stunned that pretty much every pedal I threw at it, right, not literally, of course, it powered with no problems, right? And I mean, I was able to power Electro Harmonix Bass 9, Boss SY200 synthesizer pedal, and a big surprise, Line 6 M5, right, which is really requires a lot of power and is very particular about power requirements. And then the smart clock, and on top of that, the Soul Man, right, MIDI controller. That's 5 devices off this one little power brick, and I still had some little outputs to spare, right? Now, how fantastic is that? Wow. Now, as I mentioned, some of the digital pedals, such as the Line 6 M5, that creates audio, I'll probably use the larger power supply. But in any case, when you have a combination of one of these little guys, right, for smaller pedals, and, you know, it's going to be a Voodoo Labs digital, which will power the digital label. You'll have really clean, consistent power, and the Voodoo Labs digital is truly isolated. In other words, one power output is totally independent of the other. Okay? And whereas here, you know, they don't really claim that it's isolated, though some companies do, you know. So, but it's exactly what I wanted. And it's going to be pretty easy to mount. I have to figure out how exactly on the underside of the pedal board, which is where it'll go. And it will power most of the pedals. And that was $31. And I'll tell you what, it sure beats 10 separate AC adapters going all over the place as I have now, as you saw in the video there. You know, now there was one by Donner, had 2 or 3 different models. They're pretty much all the same, really. However, I kind of like the Pigtone one because, as I mentioned, it doesn't claim 500 milliamps on the 2 high current ones. It claims 400, which is fine because, you know, a lot of the pedals handle about 400, you know. But I mean, I guess it's important to, you know, find out the power requirements of each of your pedals. So anyway, definitely as advertised, and a lot better solution than what I had previously, with, again, all these AC adapters all over the place. So highly recommended, and for 31 bucks, you just can't lose. I think there were, the Donner was like 39. In any case, there's all different kinds, basically. But this is the one I chose, and I'm glad I did, because it really works great. The little LEDs on the bottom are kind of nice, because you can actually see, what's the output jacks. But, it's going to fit underneath the pedal board, so don't necessarily need them. And remember, there's a switch, you can turn them on and off. There you go. Highly recommended. Okay, so that takes care of most of our power, right, for our pedal board. And waiting on the other power supply, the larger one, to arrive, and I'll do a video on that as well, which will power the bigger multi-effect digital pedals that usually require a little more power than what this little doodad will provide. But the combination of the two is perfect, because you'll be able to power, even if you add a pedal or want to try out a pedal. It's so convenient to just take an output out of here and plug it in, But beyond that, this will handle the smaller pedals and the pedals not creating audio, like the Soulman MIDI controller, the Disaster Area Design Smart Clock, and so on. Alright, very good. See you next time. Okay, bye. What is that?